The honor is truly mine. My apologies, I just stepped in. Thank you, Tibanana, for thinking of me. Being a featured panelist and being recognized as an entrepreneur, who knew growing up I would have this title, and especially walking around calling myself a toy maker. Say that 5 times to your Tamil mom and dad. So I guess I can put it to you guys before I start this story, because I don't want to bore you guys. But what is it that you want to know about me? Just shoot a question.
How'd you get started?
Travis knows me, but how did I get started with the whole entrepreneurial venture? I think it goes back to 1991 when I was born. The ideation, I think it's a personality thing of being an outlier, being the one questioning everything, being curious, being interested in culture, the arts, and that all ties in and aligns with being curious about human beings and caring. That's something that I definitely learned from my parents, of being selfless and being helpful to other people in some shape, way, or form, even if it's in the form of listening. So those traits grew with me, and in my final year of university, I started taking part and being very intrigued by startup groups, especially by the engineers, because Waterloo is all about engineers, and the engineers had Hard-Up meetups. Velocity is a great incubator there, and there were so many startup pitch competitions, and I rarely saw women, and I rarely saw art students, environment students getting out there speaking about ideas. We're not just researchers, we're not just theorists, we're not just humanitarians or those who learn social sciences, we learn humans. And that's where I believe I had the power in understanding human behavior, which really came to play when it came to my nephew. So before Fidget Toys was actually Fidget Toys, it was actually called the BIKE Project. BIKE stood for Believing in Kinesthetic Education. Kinesthetic education means learning while doing. How many of you actually study in a library? How many of you understood when you said, or your mom said, go study, you go study sitting at a desk in a chair? You can't listen to music, you can't move your feet, you can't get up taking breaks. But that question triggered such an important idea and a very simple product. So how do you study was a question that started on campus, and I challenged the University of Waterloo. Is this being recorded? It's okay. Waterloo president at a committee meeting, and being active on various student committees, I learned that $8 million was put aside to renovate the library. I was like, $8 million to buy IKEA furniture? Why don't we redesign what libraries look like? Because I don't study. I never went to the library once in my university career, and yet I still graduated with an honors in sociology and geography. So I wondered what studying looked like. And when I brought that challenge up to this committee, I was told to go through a special or learning abilities assessment. So I had to invest $3,000 to get an assessment because they said something was wrong with me versus understanding what the wrong was in the question in itself. I didn't take the assessment. I was going to graduate. I was like, what is this? Labels? So once I get this assessment, I'm going to go around saying, hey, I have another certification for a learning disability. So I didn't want that. And at the same time, simultaneously, as I was pitching this idea, it was just brewing. Nothing came to be. It was just a stationary desk. So imagine an elliptical in a gym. Who goes to the gym? I can really see the trend of gym going in here. But it's a stationary bike with a desk on there. And then I was working on the ergonomics for the chair because, ergonomics is important. Your posture is important for the increase of concentration. But it was about the movement. And I reached out to the university in Hamburg, Germany, because they did a lot of innovative and research within studying concentration levels, brain activity, behaviors, and such. So I reached out to them saying, do you have any paperwork on cognitive development and physical activity? Any research on that? So you can find these papers on Google. So it started getting added to the portfolio of just information. I was doing what I studied in school, which is being a humanitarian and a researcher. So at the same time, my nephew, so my nephew's actually not my direct nephew, my sister's nephew, it's actually through marriage. So at a time of the wedding and whatnot, I met my cousins, my new cousins, and I noticed that one of her siblings took Coven, my nephew, to the basement, away from the family. And I was like, whoa, that's so odd. Like, why would you do that? That triggered my attention versus anything else. So going downstairs, spending some time with him, he was 6 at the time, he didn't communicate similarly to other children. He didn't look at you in your eye, he didn't say hello or wave or smile as other children. He was just very frustrated, but it wasn't vocal. So I just sat there and it was just like, oh, you know, like there's all these kids upstairs, I should just be downstairs, spend some time with the new relatives and whatnot. And I just watched Coven's behavior. He was getting super frustrated. All he wanted was ice cream. But imagine a 6-year-old not being able to express to their parents, like, I want ice cream. So in that moment is when I noticed that the relative set up the basement, so he had a lot of toys and tools. And as my cousin was picking up a toy and handing it over to Coven to calm him down, because they thought he was acting out, they thought he was acting abnormal or he's going to start getting up and, you know, being violent with people, she kept like throwing stuff in his arms. And yet, you're trying to teach this child as well to communicate. So sign language is also something that is frowned upon in our community. Well, it was, and I hope that things are slowly changing. But didn't have his hands to kind of point and communicate. So at this point, I'm like, wait, there must be a toy for his feet. Let him get distracted away from, you know, his vision, his peripheral. And they thought I was crazy. I'm like, yo, okay, fine. Both of us are in the same category. It's okay. I ended up finding a couple of recycled water bottles, and I tied it at his feet. Again, very impulsive. That's another personality trait that I grew up with for the past 27 years of my life. Very impulsive. If you think of something, you just do. So I tied it at his feet, and he just calmed down. He just was distracted by that. And they were like, whoa, this is so weird that his behavior changed instantly. And that helped develop a design for a product that he can take everywhere. I was like, this kid is seated everywhere. So it's not only about Coven at that point. It was also in consideration of that question, how do people study? When we're studying, we're seated stationary in a desk and chair. When we're on an airplane, we're seated in a seat. We're in a passenger seat. We're in a car seat. We're seated everywhere. But who said that was the norm for human behavior, humankind, or bodies? So that recycled water bottle tied to Coven's feet has now evolved into me being up here. So I'm not really the superstar. Coven is, for just being him and being in his environment. And that's where the true passion of being curious about human beings and caring for people aligns with that line that says, you don't change that person. You're not here to change people. You're not here to label people as humans. We're here as creatives. We're here as humans who have the due diligence to serve each other. And in that moment, it's about disrupting the environment. Change what is around him. Change that has been created by humans. And just like, you know, Nathan Anna said, it's about finding the people that also think similarly to that. It's so hard to find people to think in that realm because it's a selfish world. But if we just took 1 second to just appreciate the kind of behaviors around us, we wouldn't look crazy because we're all crazy. Because our language, the way we speak, is not understood by some other people. Even right now, maybe everything that I'm saying is going right over your heads, but I still have to do what I was called here to do, was to share my damn story. And this is part of my thinking. This is my thought process to creating Fidget Toys, which is just a chapter of my story and a chapter of creating opportunities for those within the special needs community. I had to fight a fight where there's a lot of those who are partners, who are leaders within the special needs communities who take advantage of families and make it seem as if it's a loss for them. Oh, you have a child with special needs. Instead of embracing that and be like, yo, hand over technology to that child. My first mentor is someone that I found randomly at a conference, a finance conference. Still, pursue those finances. But at a finance conference, by accident, at that time, I didn't even pursue fidget toys. I just had a genuine conversation with this person, Joseph Noman, and he was standing at his booth. Instead of going around, another tip for all y'all is when you go to these networking events, don't ask about the product they're selling. Ask them about their story. Because in that moment, I learned to know that Joseph's son was also autistic. But at that very moment I met him, fidget toys was non-existent.